and beyond. That is why we both support multilateral efforts, especially those that are sponsored by the United Nations, to resolve some of the crises that are currently taking place in the region, as in Syria, Yemen, and Libya. We also both promote economic prosperity in the region. That is why we are among the biggest providers of economic and humanitarian assistance to various countries in the region. And here again, I'm thinking of Yemen primarily. Saudi Arabia is in fact the biggest provider of economic assistance to Yemen, $17 billion worth over the past 5 years. But I think the US is not too far behind in terms of the assistance it's provided over the years as well. So when we work together, I think we have accomplished a great deal together. So for one, we have managed to defeat global capitalism, and people, I think, forget that at this point, but it's certainly worth mentioning. What we really shouldn't forget, and we should always remember, is that Saudi Arabia and the United States have fought not one, but two wars side by side. So the first time we did that was back in 1990, 1991, when we expelled Saddam Hussein's invading troops from Kuwait. And then again, we did it one more time, starting in 2014, when again, our troops fought side by side to expel and defeat the terrorist group known as ISIS from Syria and Iraq. We continue to work very closely together on multiple fronts, as I mentioned. So we are working together to maintain stable global energy markets. In fact, Saudi Arabia's efforts were recognized by the previous US administration, which commended our central role in the agreement, in the OPEC Plus agreement that was reached in April 12th of 2020, which led to much needed stability of oil markets and oil prices as well. We also work very closely together to contain and to confront the malign activities of Iran in the region and beyond. It is not a coincidence that Iran has targeted Saudi Arabia and the United States more than any other country. So we have that common threat in common. And we also obviously have a common threat from various militant groups, terrorist groups, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and others. Again, it's not a coincidence that these terrorist groups have also targeted Saudi Arabia's leadership, our oil infrastructure, our security personnel, even our holiest sites in Mecca and Medina. And obviously, they have also targeted the United States over the years. That's not a coincidence. So in some ways, we not only have the same interest in the region, but I think we clearly, we also unfortunately face some of the same threats and challenges. So that's kind of an overview of the relationship between our two countries. But I would also like to mention and speak briefly about, I think, an amazing transformation taking place in Saudi Arabia, something we call Vision 2030. And the vision, in short and brief, is a broad package of economic and social reforms that was unveiled by His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman back in 2016. And the main objective of the vision is to lessen the kingdom's dependence on oil revenues and to also reduce the size of the public sector by empowering the private sector to become the primary engine of the economy. So we do this by investing more funds and our energy into the development of a number of sectors like mining, information technology, tourism, entertainment, and the list actually goes on, but these are some of the primary sectors that really have tremendous potential to not only just attract foreign investors, but also to generate jobs and as well as to grow and to diversify our economy. So the vision is not only a vision for Saudi Arabia, to be honest. I think it could potentially serve as a roadmap or as a framework for other countries around the region that I think in many ways also face similar threats and challenges. We very much in Saudi Arabia believe that the key to many of the issues that we face, many of the challenges, are global in nature and they require global solutions. At the same time, we believe that the power of technology, science, and innovation really do hold the keys to solving many of these issues. That is why we have put the development of our human capital at the top of our priorities. We have a predominantly young population that is filled, I believe, with hardworking, conscientious Saudis, young men and women, who are not only striving and making a difference and helping in the development of the kingdom, but they are actually looking beyond that. They are contributing, I think, to making a difference globally. And as we speak, there's some 200,000 Saudis studying in well over 50 countries around the world, including some 40,000 students here in the United States. So that is why we're investing heavily into education and healthcare. At the same time, and even though Saudi Arabia is very much known for its oil and energy production, we have also fully embraced sustainable development and developing green energy and renewable. We are investing quite a bit into that, especially solar and wind. It is also not a coincidence if you look at our national oil company, Aramco, that actually is not only investing in some of these renewable technologies, but it is actually leading it. So for instance, it is a leader in what is called as a capture carbon technology. We have fully embraced the the circular carbon economy, which basically aims to renew, reuse, recycle, and remove carbon from the air. We have begun producing new cleaner fuels, something called blue ammonia, for instance. We are becoming a leader on that. We just sent our first shipment to Japan a few weeks ago. And as we undergo this very exciting stage of our development, we want American companies to help us move Vision 2030 forward. American companies have been there from the beginning as we developed the kingdom back in the 1930s. So we want American companies to come to Saudi Arabia, to build offices, to build factories, to invest in our countries, to invest in our youth. We, in many ways, with the Vision 2030, we are opening up to the world. We actually started issuing tourist visas last year for the first time, and we had thousands of people coming in because we really believe that actually Saudi Arabia does have a lot to offer. So for one, we have at least 4 different UNESCO World Heritage Sites in different parts of the country. We have pristine beaches, we have amazing trails and mountains. And I think perhaps most importantly, we also have a very warm, welcoming people. A lot of people got to experience Saudi Arabia firsthand last year after issuing the tourist visa. Unfortunately, COVID-19 obviously put things on hold as international travel, as we know, it essentially came to a halt. But Saudi Arabia, I think, has done has handled the COVID-19 pandemic very well in Saudi Arabia. We have begun to loosen some of our restrictions. And I think that sooner rather than later, people will have a chance to come to Saudi Arabia to meet our people and to see some of the amazing changes taking place for themselves. So, I invite everybody here on the sessions that once, if you have a chance to come to Saudi Arabia, please do. I think you will be pleasantly surprised. And with that, I will be more than happy to take some of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, we don't generally have a shy group here. So while we're waiting for some of the members' questions, actually, we do have a raised hand. Joey Bunch, can you go ahead and ask your question? Just a second here. Okay. All right, well, let's just wait until he's ready to ask his question. But I'd like to start off with, he says he's muted. Okay, let's unmute him. Let me just start off here with another question. Given that this month celebrates International Women's Day and International Women's History Month, can you comment on the status of reforms regarding women that were initiated in Saudi Arabia in the past few years and where that is today?
Sure, I'd be more than happy to do so. So Saudi Arabia, I think, has made great strides towards achieving greater gender equality, especially over the past 5 years since the unveiling of Vision 2030. Our leadership has spoken very frankly about the fact that in many ways, not only does the future of the vision depend on empowering women, but in many ways, the future of the kingdom itself depends on making sure that women have all the tools necessary to succeed, not only at the workplace, but also at home. So over the past few years, we have passed dozens of laws and regulations to make sure that essentially every sector of the economy is open to women. So we have, not only do we have women in our diplomatic corps now, and obviously my own boss right here in Washington, Her Royal Highness Princess Rima bin Bandar was the first Saudi female ambassador. But even since then, in those 2 years, we've had 2 or 3 other female ambassadors appointed. We have women now joining our security services, our military services. We have them joining the legal profession, some of our judicial institutions. We have women race car drivers, firefighters. So I really cannot think of a or even a profession that is no longer open to women. And I think that list is the list is broadening. So at the same time, we have also made sure to essentially dismantle what is known as a guardianship system that in the past did provide some restrictions to women's mobility, both in the kingdom as well as when it comes to traveling. But we have essentially removed all of these restrictions. So women will certainly abroad freely. They can travel and drive inside Saudi Arabia without needing the permission of anyone. There was much attention given to the ban on women driving for many years, and I suppose understandably so. But what people didn't realize is that before that ban was lifted in 2017, really many sectors of the economy were open to women. Many disciplines and academic disciplines were open to women to study, so that again they can pursue their dreams. Women, not just that, but women were able to vote and to run for office way before the lifting of the ban. So the ban on driving was really a bit of a distraction, but we lifted it. We made an announcement, and credit goes to His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman here, who had his finger on the pulse of Saudi Arabia. He knew exactly that the country was ready for it. I think there were some questions, certainly in the West, as to whether the country was ready. Maybe perhaps some Saudis weren't sure about it, but His Highness and our leadership timed it just right, and we have not looked back. So we are, obviously yesterday was International Women's Day. Our colleagues at, our embassy right here has dozens of very bright, very ambitious, very accomplished young Saudi women themselves. And I think that is emblematic of many offices back in the kingdom. And it was also heartening yesterday. Not only did we, a lot of Saudi men actually celebrated this day. There was a number of online campaigns, including one sponsored by the United Nations, where Saudi men not only celebrated the day and celebrated the achievements of the women in their lives, but they also, many of them took a public pledge to make sure that they can do everything they can to make sure that women are protected, both at home and at the workplace.
So a related question has come in on the chat. Can women travel alone in Saudi Arabia if they arrive on a tourist visa?
So if they come from abroad, I believe so. Yeah, we really have removed many of the previous restrictions. So as I mentioned at the outset during my opening remarks, we believe that Saudi Arabia has a lot to offer. And so that's why we started issuing these tourist visas. But not only are we looking for tourists to come and explore our country, we are also, in many ways, we are promoting domestic tourism. I'll be the first to admit that as a Saudi, unfortunately, I have not seen enough of the country. I think there's a lot to see. And, we're hoping that we're promoting both domestic as well as international tourists. And as I mentioned at the outset, I think we have a lot to offer. But yes, so the answer is we want people to come in, we want them to travel, and we certainly want them to invest in Saudi youth, in Saudi companies, to partner with Saudi companies so that you can help us move this exciting stage of our development forward.
Great. Joey Bunch, go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, you know, the things that you're talking about are exciting, but it's hard to get past Jamal Khashoggi. How much was a setback for your international image was the murder of Jamal Khashoggi?
Right, well, thank you for asking this question. So let me make this very clear. So the murder of Jamal Khashoggi was a horrendous crime. It was a heinous crime. It was something that had never happened in our history. It is simply not how we do things. It was an egregious affront to not only our values, but it was an egregious violation of our laws. The people who committed this terrible crime were arrested, they were tried, and they were sentenced. They were held accountable for this horrific crime. And we have also taken some very concrete measures in our security service, in our intelligence apparatus, to make sure that something like this never happened again. And again, if you look back at our 90-year history, we have never experienced anything like that. Nobody was more shocked by this than us Saudi people ourselves, simply because this is not how we do things. It is not how we resolve our disputes. And we will make sure that something like this never happens again.
Okay, next question. Can you give some examples of foreign investment in Saudi Arabia outside of the oil sector?
Right, so I think two of the sectors that really hold the most potential are tourism, which I already mentioned, and the other one is the entertainment sector. And you know, both of them are very labor intensive, so I think both of them have the potential to employ thousands of both young men and women. And again, I think a credit goes to our leadership, and more specifically His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. You know, for many years, never mind international travelers, but even we as Saudis, when we thought, when vacation time came, we really didn't think, well, let's travel internally. When we wanted entertainment, we certainly didn't think there's entertainment, because the entertainment sector essentially did not exist in Saudi Arabia. But you know, credit to our leadership, we have essentially, certainly the entertainment sector have been created from scratch. We have funded and supported our young artists and writers and musicians and movie makers. And in the span of just 2-3 years, we're beginning to have this thriving art sectors made up of, again, young, ambitious, very well-connected Saudi men and women. I think they are certainly in Saudi, for Saudis, we now have an option for entertainment. And when vacation time comes, no longer do you have to start looking to travel abroad. I think the entertainment sector holds a lot of promise. We are already there, but certainly tourism. Again, for many years, we begin with, I'll start talking about us Saudis first before I start talking about international travelers. We simply didn't appreciate the fact that we had all these amazing historic sites and ruins and archaeological sites in Al-Ula in northwest Saudi Arabia, for instance, which is not only a UNESCO World Heritage sites, but we actually have 3 other UNESCO sites. We didn't appreciate the fact that we had these incredible mountains. We had tremendous beaches and diving sites. So we are rediscovering our roots. We are rediscovering our history. There's a newfound appreciation for our culture, for our diversity of our culture. And I think maybe most importantly, I think there's a newfound appreciation for the potential, the ingenuity, the power of our youth. As I mentioned, 75% or 70% of Saudi Arabia's population is under the age of 30. They are very well educated. Many of them are very well traveled. They are making great contributions inside Saudi Arabia. But some of them, as I mentioned at the outset, are looking beyond. They're trying to make a difference more globally. And we see this in some of the students who are studying here in the United States, many of whom are actually dedicating some of the time that they have in the United States to give back to the local communities. So we're all in on our youth. We're all in on harnessing the power of science and technology to meet all our challenges, including what people in the past thought were just non-existent options, like entertainment and tourism in the kingdom.
All right, I'm going to allow Tom Saponis to go ahead and ask his question. You can unmute, Tom.
I'm sorry, I accidentally hit the button.
Okay, all right. Well, then I'll move on to Mark Ewing.
Okay. The Biden administration has indicated that it seeks to rejoin the 5+1 Iranian deal. The Saudi Arabian view on this and what's being done to control the Iranians in the Middle East area.
So thank you for your question. So Iran has sought to destabilize the entire Middle East and to provoke conflicts over the past 40 years. So Iran, in very real ways, has sought and has violated every law, convention, and norm of the international community. And it has done so not just in the region, but it has also destabilized and supported militant groups and terrorist attacks in many different countries around the world, including right here in the United States. About 10 years ago, they tried to assassinate Saudi Arabia's own ambassador. Just last year, they had a big plot to targeting Iranian dissidents in France, but that plot actually extended into the Netherlands and Germany. They have also obviously have supported terrorist plots and attacks in Argentina, and not to mention all the destructive and destabilizing activities that they have undertaken in Iraq, in Yemen, in Syria, and in Lebanon. So Saudi Arabia, I think, is doing everything. And I think Saudi Arabia and the US are very much on the same, in alignment here when it comes to Iran's malign activities in the region. Again, as I said at the outset, Iran has sought to target Saudi Arabia and the United States more than any two countries in the world. Iran has for years tried to work outside the parameters of the international community. So what they've done, and they started this in Lebanon, they did it with Hezbollah. They've tried to do it with militant groups in Iraq, and they're trying to do it with this Houthi militant militia in Yemen. For whatever reason, they prefer to back these non-state actors, militant actors, and this has always come at the expense of the stability of the various countries around the world. And what we have said and what we have worked on very closely with the United States over the years is to push back on Iran to make sure that it plays by the same rules as every country in the world. And that certainly applies to Iran's activities when it comes to developing nuclear energy and nuclear weapons. So the JCPOA, Saudi Arabia has always, ultimately we did support it, but we always had reservations because of the fact that the sunset clauses of the agreement essentially render it to be temporary in nature. And so we want a more permanent agreement. And we've also made sure, we've always had our concerns about the ballistic missile program in Yemen, which is very tied, obviously very closely tied to its nuclear weapons activities. But perhaps just as importantly, and as I've already outlined, Saudi Arabia believes that we cannot move forward with Iran, and at least shouldn't move forward with Iran, unless we address all its malign activities, its destabilizing activities, the fact that it continues to interfere in the domestic affairs of its neighbors. So what Saudi Arabia, and I think to a great extent the United States, is asking for is not much. It is simply for Iran to stop its destructive activities and to play by the same rules as every other nation in the world. I hope that answered your question.
All right, we have a written question. Rosie Bashir has written an impressive book with which you are probably familiar. She argues that the Saudi monarchy has acted to reduce its reliance on religion as a grounds for its legitimacy and to increase emphasis on the history of the Saud family as its title to rule. It does seem that many of the regime's recent changes appear to defy the long-standing policies of the ulama. Is she right?
So let me put it this way. So obviously much has been written about how Islam is practiced in Saudi Arabia, what Saudis are taught in Saudi schools and in Saudi institutions. I can tell you what I know because I experienced it firsthand. The Islam that is practiced in Saudi Arabia and what is taught, what is being taught in its schools, what is preached in its mosques, is an Islam that says that the faith is rooted in moderation, toleration, and peaceful coexistence. So that is why Saudi Arabia has actually, well, for one, we have been the #1 target of terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda over the years. As I mentioned at the outset, they have gone after our leadership, they have gone after our housing compounds, our military installations, our energy installations, even our holiest mosques in Mecca and Medina. And I think that really should give everybody pause. So much, the so-called Islamic State pretends to be a savior and a defender of Muslims around the world. Yet an ISIS follower or a Daesh follower, I don't want to call them Islamic State because they're certainly not Islamic and they're not a state either. But a few years ago, as millions of Muslims around the world were breaking fast in our second holiest mosque, which is the Prophet's Mosque in Medina, this ISIS follower blew himself up outside the mosque as people were breaking fast during Ramadan, which is the holiest month of the year. So this would be the equivalent of a Christian committing a terrorist act on Easter Sunday at the Vatican. It simply doesn't make sense. It reeks of hypocrisy. And so we have done everything, Saudi Arabia has done everything it can to find the mindset, and the money that allow terrorist groups to flourish. At the same time, not only that, but we have also promoted interfaith dialogue and understanding. There's an institution in Vienna that still bears the name of the late King Abdullah, who was one of the founders of this organization. And its only objective is to promote interfaith dialogue and understanding. Our leadership, King Salman himself, but also Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in some of his recent trips, a couple of years ago when he visited Egypt, for instance, not only did he meet with the Coptic Pope, but he met with him at the cathedral in Cairo. He did the same thing when he visited the UK. He met with the Archbishop of Canterbury and went to the cathedral outside of London there. I think these are very important messages. We are trying to not only make sure that our own people in Saudi Arabia understand that interfaith understanding, moderation, peaceful coexistence are the core of our religion, but given the special status of Saudi Arabia as the birthplace of Islam, as well as the place of its two holiest sites, we believe that our actions and the words of our political and religious leadership do carry a lot of weight with the 1.5 billion Muslims around the world. So these gestures and these measures are also intent on sending a message to Muslims around the world that the right Islam, as far as we know and we understand it, is an Islam of peace, toleration, and moderation.
Thank you. So question from another participant. Thank you for your presentation on the Khashoggi murder. Can you go a bit further, given the US intelligence reports of the Crown Prince's involvement and the subsequent Biden administration's travel ban? Thank you.
Thank you. So our foreign ministry did issue a clear statement after the release of the report. We obviously rejected the findings, and the findings were based on assessments. They were not based on evidence. And, we, as I said, that when I was asked about this terrible crime, we took it, I think, we took this very seriously. It was a great affront to our value system. It was an egregious violation of our laws. Nobody was more shocked and disturbed by than us Saudis. We have made sure that the people who carried out this crime were held accountable. They're doing serious jail time as we speak. And we also made sure we took concrete measures in some of our security and intelligence institutions to make sure that something like this never happens again in the future, because it's never happened in the past. And the reason it's never happened in the past is, as I said earlier, it is simply not how we do things. It is not who we are. We don't engage in this kind of behavior.
Thank you. Is a foreign investor permitted to have majority or even 100% control of a Saudi company? Do foreign companies have to get special permits to operate in the kingdom?
Right, so you can have majority ownership. Now, over the years, Saudi Arabia entered the World Trade Organization back in 2014, I believe, or 2015. And to enter the World Trade Organization, among other trade and commerce organizations, we really did change many of our laws and regulations. And so that foreign investors absolutely, even some of our most recent laws are essentially intent or their main objective is to make sure that foreign investors have clear laws, clear guidelines, clear regulations to make sure that they have confidence that the laws are very clear, that there's transparency, so that when they go in to invest, whether independently or as part of a joint venture with a Saudi partner, that there's high confidence, there's high transparency, and that obviously transparency and clarity makes a huge difference for foreign investors. So as I said, Vision 2030 has opened a number of sectors of the economy that in the past were not open to foreign investors, but they are now. So we are welcoming foreign investors from everywhere, but especially the United States, because of the fact that American companies do have this long track record of success in Saudi Arabia. I think there's a great deal of trust between American-owned businesses and Saudi-owned businesses that developed over the past 75 years. And a lot of our laws and regulations, as I mentioned, are not only, we've moved up in the ease of doing business. There's various indexes that measure ease of doing business, electronic government. And, we've moved up on all of these scales to make sure that Saudi Arabia is as competitive a place as possible. And we also have the, King Abdullah Financial District in Riyadh, which is, slowly but surely becoming a regional hub for a lot of multinational companies that are doing business not just in Saudi Arabia, but in the region more broadly.
Okay. Is Saudi Arabia a democratic country? Also, can you tell us about gays and lesbian LGBTQ rights in your country?
Okay, so Saudi Arabia's institutions, political institutions, I think have served us very well over the past 90 years. Now they are not considered democratic institutions, but some of their institutions certainly allow and encourage and promote consensus building and consultation. So I'll give you an example. Back in 1992, something called the Shura Council, which is a consultative council, was created. And it initially started with only 60 members. As we speak, it has 150 members. It represents every region in the country. I think globally, it has the highest number of PhD holders around the world. And it also has 30 women members, or either 30 women members or 30% of the membership are women. Over the years, it has developed a lot of legislative teeth. They can initiate and propose legislation. They hold hearings of various government ministers and officials, and they pass legislation as well. At the same time, we also have national municipal councils that are actually elected. That's something people maybe are not aware of, but we had several rounds of elections for these national municipal elections. And it's also worth noting that not only were women allowed to vote, but a lot of them ran, and we have at least 20 or 25 different women in these councils around the country. We have various professional organizations that do have elections. I think the Journalists Association and maybe the Lawyers Association have elections within their bodies. So, we are not very focused on titles or how to characterize our institutions, but we are certainly not averse to reform, but we reform with the intent and for the sole purpose of meeting the needs of our people and our changing demographics. So I think anyone who is familiar with Saudi Arabia it becomes very clear that we are not averse to reform in many ways. We are reforming almost really all of our institutions, our legal institutions, some of our political institutions, certainly our economic and social institutions have all undergone many changes over the years, but especially over the past 5 years. So, we will continue to refine and to modify and to reform, just to meet our the changing needs of our people going forward.
Thank you. Oil dependency is no longer a cornerstone of the long US-Saudi relationship. Other oil export markets have become more important for your country. Please discuss these new relationships, specifically the Saudi relationship with China and the effects of these new alignments on Saudi foreign policy. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think since the premise of the question was still centered on oil and the global energy markets, I think if you allow me, please, I would like to just address a few important points. So it's important, Saudi Arabia has played a central role in stabilizing global energy markets for decades. I already mentioned the central role that we played last year in reaching this OPEC plus agreement that has really created much needed stability. So if we look at conditions now back and compare to March of 2020, there's a world of a difference in terms of stability of supply and demand. And so Saudi Arabia has put a high premium on the stability of markets over the years, but we've also been very keenly aware that there's producers, there's consumers, but there's also investors. So I think over the years we have been a very responsible player, but we have also been a leader, not just in OPEC, but even in this OPEC plus broader group, in which is essentially contains or includes every major producer in the world. I think many of the producers, oil producers in the world, are actually looking for Saudi Arabia to lead. And we have embraced this role as we have embraced a leadership role in the broader Muslim world and also in the Middle Eastern world as well. Going back to our relationships with, obviously we have many consumers and we have different markets around the world. Our biggest market is East Asia, and China, Japan, South Korea are some of our biggest customers. But I think it's important to note here that when we, our energy policies are completely separate from politics. We sell our oil to, our oil goes to where demand is. So there's no politics involved. At the same time, I should stress that there's this notion that if Saudi Arabia strengthens its relationships with China or Russia or India, that it's coming at the expense of other countries, that is simply not the case. Saudi Arabia's foreign policy is not conducted through a zero-sum parameter or framework. We very much believe that we can continue to have excellent relationships with the United States. Our relationship with the United States is absolutely pivotal. I would say it is our most strategic partner because of the reasons that I laid out at the outset of my remarks. But I also think it makes perfect sense for us to continue to cultivate and to strengthen relationships with, emerging markets, with emerging powers like China and India and other countries, due to the fact that, these are obviously they're tremendous markets, but they also are big producers, and I believe that China is our biggest trading partner, although the United States is not that far behind. So, Saudi Arabia has great relationships with the overwhelming majority of countries around the world, and we continue to build and to sustain longstanding relationships like the one we have with the United States. But we are also continually looking to build new ones and to strengthen new ones with countries in Latin America, with countries in North Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, just as examples.
Thank you. Can you discuss higher education in Saudi Arabia? How is college funded, and are there barriers for women or impoverished people?
So we have the bulk of our annual budget has gone towards education going back decades, really. So we have spent a lot, billions of dollars on both primary education as well as colleges. We have, I believe, close to 30 different colleges and universities in the kingdom. Most of them are public, but we do have a fair number of private institutions, and those are continuing to grow. Saudi Arabia, as I said, because of the fact of our demographic reality, the fact that we do have this very young population, we are, I think, understandably putting a lot of investments into not only building and establishing state-of-the-art academic institutions, but we are spending a lot on making sure that our teachers are more effective. We're spending a lot of resources into making sure that not only are our students able to enhance and to push forward our own development, but that they're able to compete with some of their global peers around the world. Not only that, but we are in some ways, and I've done some, even prior to my appointment, I've done a fair amount of research on education reform in the kingdom, and that's something actually that is in the Western press quite a bit. So I'm glad that I have a chance to speak about it. But Saudi Arabia has really reformed its educational institutions over the years. We are taking a very comprehensive look at it, or a very comprehensive approach. So not only are we building physical new institutions, state-of-the-art institutions that are incorporating the latest technological tools and the latest teaching methods, but we are investing a lot into our teachers, sending them abroad by the hundreds, including here in the United States, to learn best practices from countries that do have more established educational sectors. But ultimately, I mean, our highest priority is to produce competitive students that can not only help us develop, but who can improve the human condition around the world. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, going back to the question about religion and some of the values that we instill in our youth, when I mentioned that we promote interfaith understanding and peaceful coexistence, I think these lessons are bearing fruit in Saudi Arabia, evidenced by the fact that the 200,000 or so students that we have studying in dozens of countries around the world are indeed giving back to their local communities. So for instance, if we take the 40,000 students that are studying here in the United States, obviously they're all here to attain a formal education, but many of them are taking some time off from their studies to give back to their local communities. So they are, for instance, they are volunteering their time at senior homes, at soup kitchens, at hospitals, at schools. Some of them have actually traveled across country to make sure to help some of the communities that have been hit after natural disasters, as was the case after Hurricane Harvey just a few years ago in Texas. This is not an accident. I think this is, the credit goes to our leadership and to our educators, who I think are really stressing this notion that, don't just think of how you can improve or develop things in the kingdom and helping your fellow Saudis. Wherever you are, there's an opportunity to do good and to help your fellow mankind, man or womankind, regardless of their ethnic, national, or religious backgrounds.
Thank you. As symbolic defenders of Islam and Muslims, you don't hear of Saudi government attitude to the oppressive treatment of the Uyghur Muslims in China. Can you comment on that, please?
Right. So we have good relations with China. Our relations with China are relatively new, but as I said earlier, they are one of our biggest trading partners. We do have cultural interaction with China that has developed over the years, and so we have good relations with the Chinese government, and we do discuss. We have an open channel of communication where we discuss a very broad spectrum of issues, but generally speaking, Saudi Arabia believes in the efficacy and effectiveness of behind the scenes diplomacy and diplomatic channels, I think there's a way. Our preference is to have these some discussions about certain issues through diplomatic channels. This issue is a concern to us, but when we do discuss it, we prefer to do so in diplomatic, behind the scenes ways, rather than to make public statements that frankly often are not the most effective ways to conduct diplomacy, and often are counterproductive.
Okay. Can you comment on Saudi Arabia's view in its predatory actions, such as the South China Sea and ongoing theft of intellectual property?
I'm assuming the question is about China, not Saudi Arabia?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I meant Saudi Arabia's attitude towards China's actions in those respects.
Yeah, so I mean, I will, like I said, we speak to China about a whole, a broad array of issues and questions, but we do take intellectual property rights very seriously in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, it is one of the foundations for our global economy, and that these rights have to be protected. So we passed a number of measures in Saudi Arabia to make sure that counterfeit products are not allowed, and the ones that are actually confiscated, because of the fact we very much appreciate the damage that infringing on property rights and copyrights does. We take the issue very seriously, and in fact, it is not unusual for if somebody reads a Saudi newspaper that we actually actively go after, no matter how small of an outfit or an enterprise or even a shop, if you are carrying counterfeit products, whether it's CDs or bags or what have you, you will be shut down and you will be fined. And again, I think that shows how seriously we take this issue, which is really central to the global economic, the institutions that we have that make sure that goods and services can travel as freely as possible between countries.
Thank you. Can you tell us about Saudi Arabia's relationships with Israel and Palestine? Do you recognize Jerusalem as the capital?
Right, so I think that Saudi Arabia's relationship or policies on this issue have been clear for many years. And in fact, it was the late King Abdullah who introduced the Arab Peace Initiative at the Arab Summit in Beirut all the way back in 2002. And the initiative was actually endorsed by all 22 members of the Arab League. And it essentially offers Israel normalization with all of these 22 members in return for a just and comprehensive peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians based on a two-state solution. And that offer is still on the table. I think that if that core dispute is resolved, that it really opens the window to so much possibilities in the region. I think people should appreciate the fact that to beat militant groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hezbollah, and others, you do have to resolve this core dispute, because all of these militant terrorist groups exploit this dispute to recruit people, to recruit money, to recruit followers. So if we resolve it, not only will we obviously reduce and eliminate all the pain and suffering that this conflict, this crisis has resulted in for both Palestinians and Israelis, but an added benefit will be the fact that you will defang and neutralize some of this fraudulent narrative that these terrorist groups use. So, our offer is on the table, and we're hoping that the Palestinians and Israelis do go back to the negotiating table and that they resolve this dispute once and for all.
Thank you. Numerous questions arise about the ultimate power in Saudi Arabia being between the king and the crown prince. Can you comment, please?
Right. So it's always interesting to read, and I'll try to be as diplomatic as possible, but there's all very interesting accounts, frankly, not just in the Western press, but it's also some I come across it in some of the media in some of the other Arab countries and beyond, where, you know, a person will claim to have some incredible insights into the everyday dynamics in Saudi Arabia between our leadership. And I assure you, 99%, if not 100% of these articles are nothing but pure conjecture. There's, you know, a couple of people who write on this specific issue who have actually never, I found out, not surprisingly, have never actually been to Saudi Arabia. So I wouldn't put too much credence into some of these articles that try to, you know, create, you know, interest and intrigue. Saudi Arabia has been one of the most stable countries in a region that has, unfortunately, for many years has been defined by and its instability. Saudi Arabia's leadership has the overwhelming support of people in Saudi Arabia. Again, we have not been as stable as we have for as long as we have by accident. Our institutions are continuously reforming and evolving to make sure that we meet the changing realities, the changing demographics, the changing needs of our people. King Salman is obviously in charge in Saudi Arabia, but His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman plays a very, very important role in many institutions. And, you know, the leadership, as I said, has tremendous support from Saudis across the board.
Thank you. We are almost out of time, and so I'm going to finish up with the last question here. Can you comment on the issue of sports and involvement with the Olympic Committee? As you probably know, the Olympic Committee headquarters are here in Colorado Springs, and I understand that the involvement on the part of Saudi athletes, including women athletes, is increasing. So if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the sports is, I mean, obviously, much like music and art, I mean, it has universal appeal. For many years in Saudi Arabia, the conversation about sports began and ended with soccer, which is a great sport, but we are looking beyond that. Not only are we investing a lot into our developing Saudi athletes in many different sports, but in some ways, as part of Vision 2030, we are also creating a sports economy, essentially from scratch. So I think that there's a potential there to create, again, thousands of jobs and to generate a lot of income and jobs. So as we hold a lot of these, not just local sporting events, but Saudi Arabia over the past couple of years has indeed hosted a number of international events. We have had international golf tournaments. We have had international racing events and rallies. We had the Formula E, the Formula F. I believe there's a rally taking place in the Eastern Province as we speak, where for the first time, incidentally, 2 Saudi women are taking part in this rally by driving these very interesting looking cars. So we are basically leaving no stone unturned. We are looking at every sector of our economy to make sure that it is developed to its fullest potential. And whether it's sports or entertainment more broadly, or tourism or mining or internet technology, we realize that they all have potential to create jobs and to diversify the sources of our economy. And so absolutely, sports is part of this bigger equation. I should mention also that we've had a number of WWE events in Saudi Arabia. I'm sure there's a number of wrestling fans out there, so I didn't want to leave them out.
All right. Well, we are out of time now, so thank you very much. We enjoyed our time with you, and appreciate that that you took the time and to spend with us. To everyone else, we are offering our next speaker series event in collaboration with the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston on March 24th. This program will be a discussion of Walter Isaacson on his new book, The Code Breaker. So for more information on our programs or to join our mailing list, please visit our website at csworldaffairs.org. And again, thank you to Fahad Nazir for spending time with us today.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure. And I look forward to hopefully visiting Colorado Springs once we are over COVID.
We would love that. We would love that. We look forward to all being together in person. So I will hold you to it.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody else. Good afternoon.